everybody, I'm back. And as you can tell, we're doing my nails. And we have a princess story today. If you're new here, welcome to the nail cutting. On Wednesdays, I do my nails and I talk about the latest book I've read, which I forgot to bring with me. Okay, so today we are talking about one of the twisted tales from the Disney collection. And today it is So This Is Love. I just have to say, I loved this one. I loved this book. It was so romantic. So let's get into it. I'm also going to be doing my nails for the Disneyland reopening that I'm going to the day after tomorrow. So I need to have some beautiful princess nails because my look is being inspired by Cinderella. So I am going to make some glass slipper nails. Okay, let's start. So the title of this book is So This Is Love, and it's by Elizabeth Lim, I think is how you pronounce her last name. It starts with Cinderella approaching the castle in her carriage, just like in the movie. She is thinking to herself, even, if she can only get in one dance, she'll be super happy, and this night would have been perfect. She just wants to remember what it was like to be free. Yeah, I get that. Sound familiar? She gets lost looking for the ballroom, but luckily a charming young man finds her and shows her the way to the ballroom. And since they're there, would you like to dance? And of course she wants to dance. She just got done thinking that if she could only get in one dance, she'd be so happy. And here it was happening. It's like he read her mind. After their dance, they walk in the gardens and they talk and they laugh. He notices her admiring the roses. And he says, "Oh, you like roses?" And she's like, yeah, doesn't everybody? She tells him that her favorite roses are pink and white with sprigs of myrtle, because that is what her father had presented to her mother when he proposed to her. They continue talking, and Cinderella tells him that this night is like a dream. And the young man asks her what other dreams she has. And she kind of, being comfortable with him already, kind of says that she would like to remember what it was like to be loved. And then inside she's like, oh, yeah, that was kind of a lot to reveal when you first met somebody, but oh well, too late now. And he says that he can relate to that. And then they have a romantic kiss. And as they have their kiss, the clock tower strikes midnight and starts to chime. And Cinderella says, "Oh my, it's midnight." And the prince says, "Yes, so it is." And she's like, "Oh crap." She's like, "I have to go. Goodbye." And he says, "Wait, why? Why do you have to go?" And she's like trying to think of an excuse because her dress is about to turn into her rags and her carriage back into a pumpkin. And how would she explain all that if suddenly, you're in this beautiful ball gown and then your clothes just change into rags? What's going on here? She's gonna have to say, "Oh yeah, my fairy godmother came," and yeah. So she makes up an excuse that she hasn't met the prince yet. That that's kind of the reason that everyone was invited, and she feels obligated to go meet him. And he's like, the prince, he's like, you didn't know? And then right then she's just like, oh my God, I have to go. And she takes off. And I think we've all seen Cinderella, right? We kind of all know what's going on right here. She runs out of the ballroom. The Duke and his guards run after her because the king said that if he got interrupted, it would be the Duke's neck, because the king wants his son married right away. The king is getting older and he wants to meet his grandchildren someday. He also needs to secure his succession, blah, blah, blah. So the Duke goes running after her, sends after his guards after her as well, but she gets away. So he's chasing after her, and she gets to like the main staircase to the palace, and she loses one of her beautiful glass slippers and leaves it behind because she can't even take the time to pick up her shoe. And she goes running out of there, jumps in her carriage, and they get away. And just in time, too, because the last stroke of 12 goes and her dress turns back into her servant's outfit and her carriage turns back into a pumpkin. Horses turn back into mice and her coachman back into her dog, Bruno. And she's so very thankful to her fairy godmother. She stands up and notices her glass slipper remained. So she got one little souvenir from the night. And she looks up and she says, thank you, fairy godmother, for everything. And now she'll have to go back to real life without magic. She's gotten a glimpse of her dreams and the possibilities of leaving home, but she still doesn't feel ready to chase her dreams yet. The next morning is like any other morning, pretty much. She's getting the breakfast trays ready and she's getting ready to go into her stepsister's bedrooms and bring them their breakfast when she hears Lady Tremaine barge into Anastasia's room. And she says, get up, Anastasia. Get up. She's like, the whole kingdom is talking about it. And they're like, what, Mom? She says, the Duke. He's searching for the girl from the ball last night. The one who lost her slipper. They say he's madly in love with her. And they're like, the Duke is? She's like, no. The prince. And Cinderella walks in and hears this. And she's like, oh. He was the prince. Oh, okay. It's like dawning on her, right? And now she's like, her head's in a whirlwind. She can't even focus on what her stepmother and stepsisters are saying. And they're like freaking out because the Duke is going to come to their house and try on the slipper. And if the slipper fits them, they get to marry the prince. And they're like, yes. But Cinderella is not paying attention. The sisters are running around. Oh, fix this dress for me. Do this for me. Do that for me so that they can be presentable when the Duke comes. But Cinderella is like not even paying attention. All she can think about is the prince and how, oh, guess I'm going to marry the prince and not need these people anymore. She kind of just like walks away from them and goes to her room to get herself ready for the Duke coming. Her stepsisters are like, hello. Cinderella walks off singing the song that was playing at the ball. The So This Is Love. So this is love. The stepmother, being a little smarter than the sisters, is like, oh, it's her. She was the one that lost her slipper. Can't have that. Can't have Cinderella leaving them to have her own life. They need her there to wait on them. Hand and foot, apparently. She follows Cinderella up to her room. Cinderella's not really paying attention. She's brushing her hair and trying to look nice for when the Duke comes. Her stepmother locks her up in the tower in her room. And Cinderella's like, no, you can't keep me in here. You can't do this. Like, even Cinderella can't imagine that her stepmother is this cruel, that she would keep her from something that, was kind of rightfully hers. When the Duke's carriage pulls up, Cinderella tries calling to him, but she's so high up in her tower that he doesn't hear her. And then after some time goes by, she watches as the Duke's carriage rides away. Lady Tremaine didn't see the Duke out, so that must mean that neither of her stepsisters, were able to fit into the slipper. So at least there's that. At least the prince wouldn't be stuck with one of those awful girls. She remembers that she has the other slipper, and then she hears her bedroom door unlock. Now, back in the Duke's carriage, Ferdinand, that's the Duke's name, he is exhausted from traveling from household to household. He hopes that the next one won't be as bad as the last. The Tremaines were terrible. As he is riding through Valors, that is the name of the city, he passes a statue of his father in the city center. He is very proud of his father's contributions to the kingdom. He's horrified to see his father's statue is covered in bird poop and dogs relieving themselves on it. He's thinking about how much times have changed. The people have no respect for nobility these days. And for a prince to marry a commoner, that would have been unheard of in his father's day, who had been the previous Grand Duke, and he would have advised the king against it, as had Ferdinand. His father had overseen the rebuilding of Aurelius, the name of the kingdom, their country, and after years of war, his father had facilitated the exile of all magic and magical beings who used blessings and curses to sway politics. And here, his father did all these great things, and here he is just being a fancy messenger boy. Now, back in Cinderella's room, her stepmother and stepsisters come in. Lady Tremaine tells Cinderella she should report her for stealing. And Cinderella's like, stealing? She's like, well, where'd you get the gown and the shoes? And, because it was magic, Cinderella doesn't answer. So her stepsisters start tearing up her room, looking for, she assumes, the glass slipper. So Drizella finds the glass slipper. And this is bad because, one, Cinderella was going to find the Grand Duke and use the slipper as proof that she was the girl from the ball. Now that her stepsisters have it, they're going to use it as some kind of bargaining chip. And even if the prince, says this isn't the girl, it's, the decree said that whoever fit it, he was going to marry. So it's kind of like the law. So Cinderella goes running over to Drizella and she snatches it back from her. And Lady Tremaine is like, you give that back. And she says, no. She takes it and she chucks it at the wall and it shatters. So she won't get to have it, but neither will her stepsisters. Then Lady Tremaine says, you clean that up. She stands over her and she says, you are nothing. Who would ever want you? Certainly not a prince. And then she walks out and locks the door behind her. So her stepmother leaves and she can hear the three of them going down the hall, leaving her room. And she hears Drizella say, what are we going to do? If the Grand Duke comes back, they're going to be in trouble for hiding Cinderella. And her mother says, don't worry. We have the good luck of there being a man in town right now who deals with troublesome girls. So Cinderella hears this and she panics. She's like, I gotta figure out a way out of here. She tries kicking down the door. She tries picking the lock. She can't jump out of the window. It's too high up. And even if she could fashion something to climb down, it wouldn't be long enough. Then she's like, oh yeah, I have a fairy godmother. So she tries to call for her, and after a few moments, she materializes. And her fairy godmother says, please, call me Lenore. Fairy godmother has a first name, Lenore. And she's like, what happened here? And Cinderella says, my stepmother. That's what happened here. Lenore says, oh, she found out you went to the ball, huh? Cinderella says, yes, can you help me? And she says, unfortunately, my magic doesn't work like that. It can only set you on the path to happiness. It can't really do stuff for you. She's like, well, can it unlock the door? She says, I'll try, but it doesn't work. She says there are limits to her powers, especially in Aurelius. She had gotten around the rules kind of by putting the time limit on the night that Cinderella went to the ball. But now her wand just like wasn't allowing it. You know, kind of like when you update the operating system on your phone, some of the old features are gone and you're like, why isn't this working? Well, same thing, but with her wand. Lenore told Cinderella that magic was forbidden in Aurelius, and that's why she was having a hard time getting it to work. She starts to kind of explain it to Cinderella that the Grand Duke had made it his mission to ban magic from Aurelius. And then she's like, you know what, that's a long story. Never mind. Let's not get into that now. Then her fairy godmother says, well, maybe she can figure out a way where Bruno can help. And before she leaves, she says that she has something for her. And it's, guess what? It's her mother's beads. The ones that Drizella had destroyed the night of the ball. Those were her mother's. And Drizella had had them this whole time. So eventually, Cinderella falls asleep on her torn up mattress that the stepsisters destroyed, but she awakens to footsteps coming up to her bedroom. Her stepmother enters with a man. The man is holding a rope. Her stepmother says, this is Mr. Levere. And she looks at him and says, will she do? And he looks her up and down and he says, yes, she will do nicely. And then gives the stepmother a little pouch of coins. Then Mr. Levere ties Cinderella up, and Cinderella was able to grab a little piece of her glass slipper and hide it in her hand. He then puts a pillow sack over her head and throws Cinderella over his shoulder. He takes her outside, and Cinderella can hear her dog Bruno like barking and can feel him trying to kind of like get at Cinderella. Then she's thrown in the back of his carriage and the carriage starts moving. She can also hear that a storm is starting to brew. So as the carriage starts to move, she uses the piece of glass that she had hidden in her hand to cut herself free from the ropes. She pulls the pillowcase off of her head, and she can see where Mr. Levere had forgotten to like latch the window at the top of the double doors, probably because he was in a hurry to try to get away from Bruno. She lifts herself up to try and crawl out of the window, and the rain is really starting to pour and it's getting in her face. She's kind of halfway through the window, and then there's a sudden turn of the carriage and the door goes flying open, and Cinderella falls to the ground and goes rolling down the gravel. She immediately gets up and kind of runs to the side of the road, thinking that Mr. Levere would know this and come get her, but he never did. The sound of the rain must have like hidden the sound of her falling out. So she hides by the side of the road for a little bit, but when he doesn't come back, she starts to kind of come out from her hiding place. And then she feels something rub against her leg. And it's Bruno, her dog. And she's like, oh, Bruno, I'm so sorry this happened. Her clothes are soaked. She has nowhere to go. So they find like a little awning, it's like, in the middle of town to a shop. And they just stay there for the night. And she's like, in the morning, I will figure out what I'm going to do. But right now, just need to get some sleep somewhere dry. So her and Bruno spend the night under this awning. Then in the morning, Cinderella wakes up to a woman like shaking her and saying, Miss, are you all right? The young lady helps Cinderella get to her feet. She says, my name's Louisa, what's yours? And Cinderella says, Cinderella. And she's like, that's an interesting name. And Cinderella tells her that her birth name was Ella, after her mother, Gabriella. But one time she fell asleep next to the fire waiting for her father, and she got covered in ash. And so then her father started calling her Cinderella. She asked Cinderella, she's like, do you have anywhere to go? And Cinderella's like, no, not really. And then her stomach starts growling. This young lady, Louisa, says that, she has to get to work. She works at the palace as a seamstress. And Cinderella can come with her and get something to eat. And she might be able to get her some work, at least for like a couple days. But they'll have to hide Bruno because her boss there, who is also her aunt, doesn't like animals. Cinderella is very thankful for this and kind of shocked. She, of course, the idea of maybe running into the prince crosses her mind, but she puts it right out because, he probably wouldn't even recognize her in her rags. Back at the palace, Ferdinand tells Charles that he wasn't able to find his glass slipper girl. He says that he's been to all 123 households, and she wasn't there. Nobody fit the slipper. And Charles is like, wait a minute, there's more than 123 households in our kingdom. And Ferdinand says, 123 noble households. And the prince says, you're supposed to go to every household, noble and common, because, at the ball, every eligible maiden was to attend, regardless of their class. And then Ferdinand says, well, you know what? I don't really have time. He's like, I've got important work to do, matters of state, right, Your Majesty? With, the king was there. And he's like, yeah, you have important things to do. And so Charles says, well, fine, I'll go myself. And the king's like, no, too dangerous. You're a prince. That's too dangerous. Besides, your aunt, the Duchess, is visiting, and you're supposed to have lunch with her today. Now, the Duchess hadn't been to visit in like 10 years. There was also some sort of falling out because when she left, she said that she would never be back. Right then, the king starts like choking on his pastry. And the prince gets up and goes to him, and he's like doing the Heimlich maneuver or something on him, and his pastry goes shooting out of his mouth. And Ferdinand says, are you okay? He's like, that's the third time this week that has happened. And Ferdinand says, maybe you should sit out of today's council meeting. Take it easy and rest. And the king says he will not be sitting out of today's council meeting. He is perfectly capable. So then Ferdinand leaves, and the prince tells his father that, he'd like to start being included on the council meetings so that he can learn what his role is going to be when he's the king. And his father says, yes, that's a good idea, but let's wait until this whole situation with your mystery maiden is taken care of. And we will revisit that. And that satisfies the prince. So Charles leaves his breakfast with his father, and when he's out in the hall, he runs into the royal physician. And he asks about his father's health. And the physician says that, he's an older man, but he's doing pretty good. He's a little bit stressed out, but that he's going to prescribe him a sleeping draught to help him sleep at night, and that should help everything. And this makes Charles feel better. So when Louisa and Cinderella get to the palace, Madame Ermina, who is Louisa's aunt and her boss, isn't happy that Louisa brought along a friend. She's like, you can't just bring people to the palace for a job. She's like, they need to have background checks and there's, a protocol for these things. Cinderella kind of accidentally stumbles into a job. She is downstairs when the Duke comes in to the office asking for the Duchess's attendant. He sees Cinderella and he's like, oh, just assuming she's it for someone, for some reason, because he hadn't seen her before. So he takes Cinderella. He's like, I'll show you where her apartment is. And on his way, they stop by his office. And he's like, I want to talk to you. And he tells Cinderella that he wants her to spy on the Duchess for him. And she's like, okay. She's like, what are you looking for? And he's like, anything, everything. He's just like, I just want to know everything about her. What does she do during her day? All that stuff. And Cinderella's like, okay, sure. I'll see what I can do. Then she asks the Duke, she says, so, this slipper, she's like, can anyone try it on? And he says, yeah, anyone can try it on. She's like, can someone like me try it on? And he says, oh, you? No, not you. He's like, you're a servant. You have to be noble. A servant couldn't marry a prince. So when they're done with their conversation, he has his attendant show Cinderella where the Duchess's apartment is. She knocks on the door and she goes inside. And the Duchess says, oh, are you my next victim? Apparently, the Duchess has a hard time hanging on to an attendant because she's kind of mean. So she's like explaining to Cinderella like what her duties are gonna be. She's got kind of a haughty tone to her, kind of berating Cinderella for every little thing she says wrong or does wrong. She's kind of like acting like, oh, she's gonna fire her already too. But Cinderella says, oh, I'm sorry. She's like, I'll go get you another girl. And the Duchess is like, she's like, no. She's like, tell me, what do you think of this? And she like holds up a stole to her. She's like, give me your honest opinion. And Cinderella's like, well, honestly, it doesn't really flatter you. And she suggested, more of a simple cape. And the Duchess was like, huh. She's like, you know what? I agree with that. I like that. She's like, you can stay on with me for a while. So the Duchess has to go to a lunch with the king. She tells Cinderella, be back here in an hour. Don't be late. And Cinderella says, okay. And because Cinderella doesn't want to be late for when she comes back, she doesn't wander off too far. She kind of just strolls the halls and looks at, all the paintings on the walls. And she's standing there and all of a sudden she hears somebody say, oh, back from your ride, Your Highness, it's the prince. He's coming down the hall towards her. And she's like, oh my gosh. She like wants to say something, but she's like kind of scared to. And it's like, besides, what do you say exactly? He's gonna pass her in a second. So she just kind of like goes into a curtsy like all the other servants were doing as he passes by. And when he passes her, he stops and he says, oh, he's like, you must be my aunt's attendant. He's like, tells Cinderella that, his aunt is very dear to him and please do everything you can to make her stay comfortable. He knows that she's not always easy to get along with, but it would make him very happy. She's like, yes, Your Highness. And she's kind of heartbroken because he didn't seem to recognize her. She thought that he loved her, and yet you can't even recognize me out of a ballroom gown. That's not a good sign. But when we see or hear the prince's side of this story, there had been something very familiar about it, and the thought even crossed his mind that could be her. But at the same time, I was like, no, that's impossible. It was like, where would a servant get the gown and the glass slippers and all that stuff? And it seems to me like nobody's coming up with the idea that somebody can borrow those things, right? Like, over the next week, Cinderella decides that she's just going to pour herself into her new job and just focus on that. She's not going to worry about the prince. He obviously didn't care for her as much as she thought. And what else can she do? She's got to make a new life for herself this way. And, the Duchess, she was stern and eccentric, but she wasn't mean-spirited the way Lady Tremaine had been, so Cinderella can handle it. So one day, the Duchess sends Cinderella to the library to fetch her some books. She says to get her something with pirates and beheadings. Cinderella goes to the library, and the librarian picks some stuff out for her. On her way back, she decides to go check on Bruno. They had found a hiding spot for him, and they'd been sneaking him food. But when she went to go check on him this time, Madame Ermina had him on a leash. She found him, and she's like, whose dog is this? And he's mine. And Madame Ermina is like, of course it's you. She's like, pets aren't allowed. Either he goes or you both go. And Cinderella's begging because, Bruno's her friend and family member. And then she hears the Duchess's voice saying, what's going on here? She's like, I came down to check on Cinderella. She's taking too long bringing me back my books. And Ermina is just like, oh, she has this horrible animal. And Duchess is like, I'll take him. She'll take care of the dog, and then Cinderella won't have to get rid of him, and everything will be good. And Cinderella, come on, let's go. And Cinderella knew right then, she's like, oh, if this woman loves dogs, then she's okay. She's a good person. Now, later, Cinderella kind of flips through one of the books that she had gotten for the Duchess, and a note falls out of one of them. And it says, we must bring back magic. Maybe 36 pirates and 47 ships can help, or something like that. Signed, Art. The Duchess's late husband, his name was Arthur. So, Cinderella finds this strange, but she's like, this is interesting. Okay. So then Cinderella is out in the hallway. Someone comes to her and gives her a message, and it's the Duke. He wants to see her right away. She goes to his office, and he's like, okay, what do you have to report? And she's like, you didn't really tell me what you're looking for, so I don't even know what to tell you. But he's kind of like harping on her, so she's like, well, I gotta tell this guy something to get him off my back. So she tells him something that she thinks is harmless, and she's like, well, she takes a nap every day, and she takes a sleeping draught, same one as the king. And yeah, she does that every day. The Duke is kind of like, oh, really? Interesting. Okay. Cinderella's like, okay, so whatever, yeah. And she leaves. She helps the Duchess up from her nap and gets her going. The Duchess mentions that she's gonna go on an outing with the prince. Interesting. So she goes on an outing with the prince, and they're talking about, they don't know it, but they're talking about Cinderella and this woman that he just is like obsessed with finding. They decide that to try and find her, to kind of lure her back out into the open, they're going to have another ball. Only this time it's going to be a masquerade ball, because the Duchess wants to make sure that the prince is falling in love with someone for who they are and not just a pretty face. Long story short, they arrange for this ball, the king approves it, blah, blah, blah. Cinderella and her new friends that she works with, some other servants, they all decide that they're gonna sneak into the ball. Her friend has come across some gowns that they can borrow and sneak in. And it'll be a masquerade, so no one's gonna know it's them. Now, the Duchess suspects that Cinderella is probably, and all her friends, because it happens at every ball, some of the servants get dressed up and they sneak in too. So the Duchess says something to Cinderella like, well, I hope you're not thinking of, sneaking into the ball. That wouldn't be right. Oh, but yeah, by the way, here I have these two beautiful masks that I'm not going to use, but you can have them if you want. Just don't tell me what you're going to do with them. She takes the masks. Her friend has the gowns. They get together. They get all ready. Cinderella has a pale pink dress with fluted sleeves and it's form-fitting, and then her mask is a white swan. Her and her friends sneak into the ball, and they see the prince standing up by his father, and he's doing the whole procession thing, bowing to each person that approaches him, blah, blah, blah. And her friend is like, let's hit the buffet. So they go to the buffet, and she kind of loses her friend, and then she sees her stepmother and her two stepsisters. Now, she had been kind of afraid of going to the ball, partly because she didn't want to see them. So she sees them and she's like, oh, I'm gonna go. And she goes to leave and she bumps into somebody, this young man, and knocks off his mask. And she goes to pick it up and she goes to give it to him, and it's the prince in incognito, like dressed as not so princely, right? He's trying to come off like a guest. She's just speechless. He looks at her, he puts his mask back on, and then he looks at her and he says, it's you. Okay, I'm gonna end the story there. I have my nails on. Can you see where I'm going with my glass slipper nails? Oh my God, I can't wait. I can't wait. So, yes, I will finish the story next week. Will also be finishing my Disneyland glass slipper nails. If you liked this video, let me know by giving it a thumbs up. It's how I know what kind of videos to make. Make sure and subscribe and hit the notifications bell so that you'll know when I upload new videos. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!